Oh,
The volume is good.
okay, great.
Yes. Okay. All right. Awesome. Awesome. We're live, right live on both our YouTube channel and also our Facebook channel. Well, it's already 10 p.m. in Nigeria, and I'm sure that everybody connecting from all over the world will be in different time zones. And thank you for joining us for this conference. We started since Monday, and it's been awesome. We've had different parent coaches from all over the world, sharing with us on different aspects of parent coaching. And today we are live with a couple, interesting, all right, that are going to share with us on step parenting. This is one topic that we're not very deliberate about, and the intentional parent taught at this annual conference that we're going to be doing this and teaching people how to do this and navigate it. And we found a couple from the US who have been able to do this and also teach it. So you know that we told you that at this conference we're not just bringing you people that you just need to go on Google and just find the information. We're bringing you real life experiences. And this is the last session of the TIP annual conference of 2020. We've had 3 sessions earlier in the day where we had 3 amazing speakers. Laurie Sims of Nacho Kids is going to be speaking, and her husband for the first time at a TIP annual conference. We met not so long ago, and awesome people. Let me tell you a bit about this couple. They're a blended family coaching team. So they coach, families that are blended. You're divorced, you're separated, you have, and then you got married, and then you guys have to blend into these families together. And what part of what they are saying is, how does it work? How do you navigate this? A lot of people have asked questions on how they can do this. Laurie and David Sims are the creators of the Nacho Kids method and the Nacho Kids Academy. So after Laurie and David found a way to come back from the brink of divorce and better their blend, they had to share it with the world. So as a team, they bring both male and female perspective to blended family issues, because there are lots of issues as regards blended family. Their mission is to reduce the percentage of failed blended families. They say that blended families fail a lot. As in, when you get divorced, you remarry, or you lose a spouse, you remarry. The failure percentage of those families, the failure rate is actually quite high. They aim to reduce the percentage of failed blended families by empowering step parents with tools to save their relationship and their sanity by effectively using the Nacho Kids method. The Nacho Kids method has been a blended family lifesaver for thousands of step families around the world. Right? So we have David and Laurie Sims right in the studio with us. So I'm going to be leaving the studio, and they're going to be teaching us. So I have my daughter, but they're going to be teaching us, how do you navigate step parenting. I also want to learn, because I haven't really, sat in a class where I'm actually learning this specifically. This is really specific. So I want to learn what it is that we need to do specifically. Welcome here, David and Laurie. Thank you for doing this. I don't take it for granted. I know that you're taking out your time. The time difference is, a lot, and yet, you agreed to be here to share with the TIP Academy. Thank you so much, and you're welcome to the Intentional Parent Annual Conference 2020. So I leave the studio, and you have the studio to yourself to share with us so that we can learn.
Well, thank you, Wendy. It's great to be here.
Yeah, that was an amazing introduction.
It
like,
was.
Like I wanted to clap and go, yay! Teach me something.
Well, I guess I'll start off and tell you a little bit about our story. David and I met 12 years ago. And
feels like 100.
Yes, feels like 100. And I have one son and he has 4 sons. And we knew that the blend that's what we call it more in the United States. I think they call it stepfamilies, more other places. We knew it wouldn't be easy. So we did our research. We read a lot of books and articles and talked to people. And we thought we were prepared. We thought that we would do good. And we actually met with a counselor that I knew, and he gave us some tips too. And about year 2, things went bad. I mean, really bad. Everybody was miserable. I think if we would have had a dog, the dog would have been miserable. Nobody wanted to be here. Of course, the stepkids didn't want to come for visitation. I didn't want to come home from work. David didn't want to come home when his kids weren't here. It was just horrible. And we really were about to get divorced. And as a last ditch effort, we went and talked to that counselor we had talked to before we got married. And he kept telling me over and over and over again that they were not my kids, referring to the stepkids. Of course, I knew they weren't my kids, but I had still taken on a parental role with them. So that's why he kept telling me they were not my kids. And after we left, David and I were talking, and I was kind of making fun of the counselor. And I said, they are Nacho Kids. And that's when it hit me that I was creating my own misery in the blend. And by me being miserable, I was making everybody else miserable. So what I decided to do was to step back and not parent the stepkids. And our relationship had gotten so bad between the stepkids and myself that I couldn't even say hey to them and them say hey back to me because they didn't like me. They didn't want to say hey to me. So it hurt my feelings when I would say hey to them or try to talk to them and they wouldn't respond. So I even quit saying hey to them. I know that sounds extreme, but again, we were in such a place of hurt and anger and resentment that we had to heal. It took about a year from me disengaging or stepping back, and I didn't parent them. If they asked a question, I would tell them to go ask their dad. You know, if they said, can I go next door? I'd say, go ask your dad. I wasn't rude to them, but I just did not engage with them in anything that could be turned into something negative or perceived as something negative. Because before I started nachoing, as we call it, if I told the stepkids to brush their teeth, that's simple, right? They shouldn't get mad at me. Oh, but they did. They got very mad at me because who was I to tell them what to do? And you have to remember when David and I were dating, I didn't tell them what to do. Then all of a sudden, when we get married and I move in, I take over the motherly role, which is what you think you're supposed to do. I was telling them to do chores. I was telling them to brush their teeth, take showers, do their homework, all that stuff. But they did not respect me because I hadn't earned their trust. I hadn't built a bond with them. Now, if we backtrack a little bit, a couple of his kids were really excited about us getting married. So what happened? What changed? I changed. I turned into a parent to them. And that's not what they needed. They had a mom and they had a dad, and they did not need me coming in as a stepmom telling them what to do. So after about a year, I started re-engaging with them slowly. And when I say slowly, I mean slowly. I would come in the room if they were laughing and kind of engage with them. And then if they did something that I felt David should discipline them for or tell them not to do it again, and he didn't, then I would just go to the other room because it did no good for me to tell David how I thought he should parent. He needed to be able to parent like he felt he should, and the kids needed him to parent them and not me. Now, I will say it was not easy for me to keep my mouth shut. It was very hard because I wanted so badly to say, why are you letting them get away with this? Or why aren't you punishing them for this? Because in my mind, they deserve to be punished. Well, we basically, I had a secret Facebook group that I started sharing what I was doing and having success with other people. And through the years, it's kind of grown. We recently, last year, we started our podcast, Nacho Kids Blended Family Podcast. And we have the Nacho Kids Academy, where we teach people how to nacho properly, because it does have to be done properly. And it has to be done in a way that's not rushed. It takes time. And now the relationship that I have with my stepkids is amazing. Absolutely amazing. They no longer want to kill me. They no longer hate me. They no longer ask their dad if I have moved out yet. So one of them actually referred to me as his best friend. I felt like I had won the lottery when he said that, because we have came so far. And mine and David's relationship has improved and strengthened through all this. And again, it wasn't an overnight process. 2 years of hurt took over a year for us to be able to heal and to start over, basically. David?
Yes, everything she said is accurate. Yeah, well, oftentimes I get asked, how did I feel about the whole process? Because when you start talking about her stepping back, really what it entailed was her physically removing herself from the entire family dynamic for almost a year. And so when the kids were not here, we interacted with each other and we acted like a typical husband and wife team and all that. And then when my kids would come back home, then what she would end up doing is she would not participate in dinner time most of the time. She would go into her bedroom or our bedroom and she'd watch TV or whatever, because she just didn't want to interact with them. They didn't really want her to interact with them. And so oftentimes I get asked, well, how did that make you feel? And honestly, at the time, things were so bad between everybody in the household that it was a welcome relief to not have that additional stress. I think she was relieved that she didn't have to do things and take on a role that she didn't want to have to take on. I was relieved that that she wasn't feeling stressed out, and the kids weren't fussing about her, and she wasn't fussing about the kids, because they didn't have any interaction to fuss about. And then the kids, I think they were relieved because there wasn't that constant parenting from somebody that they didn't want to parent. So it really was kind of a big pressure valve release for everybody. And so it was welcome. And then over time, as the pain started to heal and his relationship started to build, we were able to start that process of bringing everybody back together and having what I guess everybody would consider a typical family unit. Even though I don't think there is such a thing as a typical family unit when you're a step family.
Yeah. And one thing that we learned through this, we learned a lot, but one major thing that we learned is our expectations were wrong. You cannot have nuclear family, meaning your first family with the mom and the dad and the kids together. You can't have the expectations of that out of a step family, because it's not a nuclear family. It's not a first family. You don't have those bonds with the kids like you do your own children. And we also learned that everything we had prepared for was not working.
Mm-hmm.
So by me, again, doing nacho, as we call it, I was doing the complete opposite of the research we had done. And it seems counterintuitive to do so, but it worked amazingly. And we've had great success with it.
Oh, yeah.
We share it with everybody that we can, because we don't want blended families to give up. And we were this close, to giving up and throwing it away. And it wasn't because we didn't care about each other. Well, at the time, we really didn't like each other very much, but it's not that we didn't really care about each other, but it was too much. It was stressful for me and stressful for everybody. The kids were complaining to him about me. I was constantly complaining about his kids to him. He was squished in the middle. He didn't know what to do. He couldn't make anybody happy. And one dynamic that we had that a lot of people don't have is we had the in-laws that were all up in what was going on. So the stepkids would go see the grandparents or the sister, the aunt, and they would go, "How's Lori treating you?" Just wanting that negative feedback. And I remember one of the stepkids, after I started nachoing, he's like, "Fine, I guess. We hadn't really talked to her." So they had nothing to complain about. And another thing that we had to do was, at one point, I could not be left alone with the kids. It wasn't because I thought they would kill me, but I did think that at once. It was because what happened with them. Sorry, excuse me.
Life happened, right?
Yeah. I forgot to mute my phone. Where was I? Do you remember where I was?
Nope.
It shows how much he listens to me. All right, let's see. I know I was talking about the grandparents and okay, I lost my train of thought.
Start over.
So basically, I'm just going to recap, is we have learned that a blended or step family is not like a nuclear family. Don't expect it to be. Don't expect your stepkids to fall in love with their stepmom like you did, because she didn't date them. Don't expect her to love your kids like her own, because they're not. And I'm not being mean when I say they are not your kids or Nacho kids. It's reality. Legally and biologically, they are not your kids. That doesn't mean that you can't love them. That doesn't mean that you can't be a mentor to them. I often tell people the best thing you can do is to be a fun aunt. Be, the extension of the dad. Support your husband in his parenting role, but don't try to make him parent like you think he should, because he never will. Don't try to push him to parent. Let him do it on his own. And a lot of times women are so strong-willed and outspoken that when we see something wrong, especially with the stepkids, we're quick to say something about it. Whereas what we're seeing with the stepkids that's annoying us may not annoy us if it was our own kids, and it may not annoy the dad. So what they're doing that I consider wrong, he may not consider wrong. So you have to take all that into consideration. And when you fell in love with your significant other, you didn't. I love that David was a good dad. It was because he had his kids a lot, mostly in the States. There's 50-50 at most. And he had his kids, 80% of the time, if not more. So that was impressive. And he had a good relationship with his kids. His kids were well behaved. And then all of a sudden, when we got married, I didn't think those things. I thought I should have to tell him how to parent. And I thought that he needed my input and that I needed to take over and show him how it was to do right. That wasn't the case. So a lot of times we have the step parents focusing on what the stepkids are doing wrong in their eyes, and they lose focus on why they fell in love with their significant other in the first place.
Yep. So I do want to open this up for questions, because I know that there's a live feed going out to Facebook and YouTube, and we'll continue talking, but I'm going to give the viewers time to throw some questions in if you may have some. And we did have somebody post, support your husband in his parenting role. So let's talk about that for a minute, because the big part of what Nacho Kids promotes is, because we are asking the stepmom typically to to step back away from parenting the biological kids, what it does is it enables the biological parent, which a lot of times is the dad. It allows him to step into that parenting role that he may not either have had to do before or he's not used to doing. Sometimes he doesn't even want to do it, but it forces that to happen because no longer is there a buffer in the stepmom coming in and saying, I'm going to take over this role for you. And so they're being enabled to step in or empowered to step in and be that parent that their kids actually want them to be. They want them to come in and do that parenting role. And it's so much easier once the biological parent figures that out and navigates that properly. It's easier on them because they have a better relationship with their kids at that point. The kids have a better relationship and more respect for the parent. And then the step parent is not having to step into a role that they shouldn't have to do.
And one thing too, a lot of times kids will take you for granted, and they're not stupid. Kids are not stupid, and they will use you. So the things that I was doing for the step kids, they didn't really appreciate. It was expected because from the beginning I had done those things. Well, when I started stepping back and disengaging, that's when they began to appreciate what I had done for them in the past. Because they're like, wait a minute, she's not doing this anymore. And a few times I think we heard, well, you're not my mom. And my response was, exactly. And you know what that means? I have to do nothing for you. Nothing. Anything I do is because I choose to. And we don't want to give the impression that the Nacho Kids method is only about stepping back and disengaging. There's a lot more to it. One thing is learning to keep your mouth shut. One thing is putting the correct emotional weight on things. Sometimes we have to look at things and say, you know, is it really worth me being upset for 2 hours because the stepkids didn't do the dishes like I think they should? Or is it worth me losing my marriage because he won't make his kids eat broccoli? You know, some stepmoms eat healthier than others. Some don't. And you've got all these things that are changing. And so you have to learn to look at yourself and see what contributions, negative and positive, that you're making in the blend. One thing that we teach is to say 5 positives before you say a negative. And that should be a golden rule everywhere. But we laugh that the reason I didn't talk to David's kids for a year was because I couldn't think of anything good to say. The sad thing is that was true. Again, I cannot tell you how hurt I was and how hurt they were. I know hate is a strong word, but they hated me. And honestly, I felt pretty much the same towards them. It did not bother me if they ever came back, and it wouldn't have bothered them. They would have celebrated if I would have left. And a lot of times David would not do things like I thought he should. And then I remember thinking, I don't want somebody to critique my parenting and tell me what I'm doing wrong. So I don't need to do that with him. He's been doing it so many years without me.
Just fine.
Yeah, just fine. He doesn't need me. We have a person that says putting the correct emotional weight on things with a question mark. Okay, so for instance, like I said, the dishes. Is it worth you being upset and using all this energy to be angry for 2 hours because of the dishes? Now, I get that it's frustrating when the dishes aren't done or the stepkids don't do their chores. But the way that we suggest that you handle that is, I come home and the kids haven't done the dishes. Then when David walks in the kitchen, I just say, hey, when you get a chance, can you do the dishes? I'm not saying your lazy kids didn't do the dishes. I'm saying, can you please help do the dishes? So the correct emotional weight is, yes, I can be mad, and yes, I can be frustrated. But being angry takes a lot more energy than being happy. And here's kind of how I joke about the emotional weight. If your stepkids had skipped school and you come home, you're not going to be happy, right? So here's the emotional weight. I'm not happy. Well, I come home and the stepkids had not only skipped school, but they're drinking beer and have a bunch of girls over. I'm really not happy. So that's the emotional weight. Yes, you can be mad, but you've got to put it in the right context, and you've got to say, will this really matter in 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, or 5 years? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize how unimportant some things are until a tragedy strikes. Mm-hmm. So the stepkid drawing on the couch with a marker, yeah, that's pretty bad. But if you found out that the stepkid had a terminal illness, would you really be upset about them writing on the couch with a marker? No, you wouldn't. All right, more questions.
All right, so we have one come in that says, how do you handle situations where your spouse is treating your children differently from his kids from a previous relationship, which happens all the time?
Well, we need to clarify, though, when you say treating your children, I don't know if you mean your children that you brought into the relationship or children you have together.
Okay.
But regardless.
All right, well, let's assume that it's children. She's got children she brought in, and he has children. And,
okay.
And he's treating his kids differently than her kids. So let's go down that path.
Okay. Well, that's normal. One thing that we have learned is definitely a lot of times the step parents have higher expectations for the stepkids than they do their own biological children. Mm-hmm. A good example of that is David's kids were 14 and he was fixing their breakfast. And I'm like, they're 14 years old. They can fix their own breakfast. Quit babying them. Well, when my son turned 14, I was gladly fixing his breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember one thing I don't think we've addressed yet is guilty parent syndrome. We refer to it as GPS. Guilty parent syndrome is real. And it may be that the parent isn't so strict on their kids because they have guilty parent syndrome. And guilty parent syndrome can be anything from, I'm afraid that if I discipline my kid, that they won't want to come here, they'll want to go live with the other bio parent. Or it may be, I only have my kids every other weekend and I don't want to spend all my time fussing with them or putting them on restriction. It's not that you did anything wrong to create the divorced family, which in turn created the blended family. It's just you don't have your kids all the time. And so there's this guilt behind it. Mm-hmm. For example, my son, he only goes to his dad's every other weekend and a couple of weeks during the year. I still have guilty parent syndrome. On the Wednesday before he goes to his dad's on Friday, I get off kilter. I'm not as happy. I'm a little sad. So of course, if he does something wrong, I'm not going to be as quick to discipline him because I don't want him going to his dad's and the last thing that we did was argue or me put him on restriction or tell him, when you get back, little boy, I'm going to tear your tail up, whatever it is. So guilty parent syndrome is not an excuse. It's a reality. And even though I know I have this, it doesn't change the way that I react with my son. And David and I have both talked about how before we got married, we agreed on parenting. We did this 100 questions, little test thing. We had one answer that was different. We agreed on finances. We agreed on parenting. We agreed on all kind of stuff. But when reality hits and you don't have your kids 50% of the time, like he didn't, he's not as strict with them. So he ended up not parenting even like he would if he was still in that nuclear family.
Yep. Another thing that a friend of ours named Laura Petherbridge often says is that you see your stepkids through the eyes of responsibility whereas you see your bio kids through the eyes or the lens of love, and therefore you treat them differently. And honestly, I mean, I've got 4 kids and I treated them differently, and they were my biological kids, not even my stepkids. So don't get too hung up on everybody getting treated exactly the same. Typically that's just not going to happen. And where you have to make sure is not happening is they're not being mean to your kids, or they're not being abusive to your kids. That's the type of injustice that you're kind of looking for. If you've got that going on, you have a problem. But if it's just they're not being treated exactly the same, like sometimes we hear people say, well, you should love the stepkids like your own kids. We don't agree with that. And the reason why we don't agree with that is because I think that is pretty damaging to your biological kids when you think about it. If I go up to my kids and I say, I love Lori's son as much as I love you, how does that make you feel? I know how it makes them feel because I've asked. and their response was, it makes me feel pretty crappy, honestly, that you take this, kid that come in, 9 years after I've been here, that's not even your blood, and you love him the same as you love me. That doesn't even seem right. And I think that's the way most biological kids feel if you say that I love my stepkids as much as I love you. So you have to be very careful with that.
I want to go back before we answer this next question. So how do you handle the situation when your spouse is treating your children differently? If it's your biological children that you brought into the relationship, you need to talk to them about them stepping back and letting you parent your child and they parent their children. Okay, so they have together. So it's a child you have together. Okay, I was getting to this part. So if you have the child together, it definitely creates a different dynamic.
Oh, yeah.
But here's the thing. Do you want your significant other to parent your child more strict than they do their own children, or to be lax with your child that you have together? Because that's what he does with his kids. What you want is for him to be more strict with his kids that he brought into the relationship. And more than likely, that's not going to happen. So just be thankful that he is parenting the child you have together.
Yeah.
And he has different expectations for that child because he doesn't have that guilty parent syndrome.
Right. So the kids that aren't coming over all the time, he's not seeing all the time, whether he knows it or not, there's a part of him that feels bad for them and feels like he has to overcompensate for the fact that he's not seeing them as often. Or maybe they're even in a bad situation at the other parent's house, or the other parent is not very good, or she's an alcoholic or whatever. There's all these reasons why, as a parent, I feel bad that my kids are in the situation they're in, and therefore I will overcompensate for that by doing things that I wouldn't do for the kid that's there with me all the time. I wouldn't treat them the same.
Right.
And it's often hard for people to see that, but once they do, they're like, oh, wow, now I understand why I'm doing this. And of course, knowing that, you can look at ways to change things and not make it be so bad or stand out so much to the other kid.
Right. And your significant other may actually have, I guess we would call this reverse guilty parent syndrome with your kid together that you have together, because he does have that child all the time. So it's different. He has that child all the time. So he feels guilty that his kids don't get to be with him all the time, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, next question.
All right, so somebody says, what happens when the stepmom has walked into a messy parenting? In this case, do you step in or do you simply become permissive?
From our experience and the people that we have coached and all of our Facebook members, if you step in, you will regret it. And the reason I say that is because you come in and you have a heart of gold. You really want to help things. Your intentions are good. You want to make this life better for everybody. But then all of a sudden you're trying to fix something you didn't break in the first place.
Yeah. and nobody in the family is wanting to be fixed.
Right.
So you're stepping in and you're trying to get people to change their attitude and change the way they are, and they don't even want to change.
And then the next thing you know, whether it's 6 weeks, 6 months, or even 6 years down the road, you are angry that you're the one putting in all the effort to try to fix these kids or this blend. You are burnt out because you're doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
You're running around like crazy. You're trying to make the kids grow up to be great, outstanding adults. You're giving your all.
Yep.
And at some point, you realize that you are caring more than the bio parent.
Yep.
And caring more than the bio parent will create frustration, disappointment, anger, and disgust.
Yeah.
Because you will be disgusted that you care more than their bio parents.
Yeah. And just realize that you don't have a stepkid problem. If the stepkids are running around acting crazy and not being parented, that's not a stepkid problem. That's a parenting issue. That's an issue with the biological parent not doing their job properly. Or they could be, they're again back to the guilty parent syndrome. They could be not parenting because they feel bad for the kids or the situation that they're put in and all those things. And we're not saying that it can't be improved upon. We're saying that it has to be something that you are very deliberate and intentional with, and you have to have the buy-in of that other parent to want to improve that situation. You parenting the stepkid is not going to fix the problem at all. You working with the parent to improve their parenting will improve the stepkids.
And you have to be cautious with that.
Mm-hmm.
And we do want to clarify something. The Nacho Kids method is not for everybody. We know that some stepmoms come in, the child actually wants another mom because their mom's just not present or whatever. And the dad's fine with the stepmom parenting the kid. But most of the time, the dad will say, sure, I'm fine with you parenting them. Then the first time you tell the stepkid they're on restriction or they lose their phone, then the dad comes in and says, here's your phone. I don't know why you took their phone. And so they're not supporting you with that. And then that creates a whole nother mess, because for you to be able to parent, you have to have their support. But that does happen in some situations where, say, the husband and the stepmom are on the same page and he doesn't get mad when she parents his kids. He doesn't get offensive or defensive when she says something about his kids, and it works. But we have found that the majority of times that's not the case. Mm-hmm. Even if the bio mom is dead and has passed away, they still have a mom. That doesn't mean they don't have a mom. It just means she's not there.
Yep. So here's one that's interesting that was brought up. What if the dad is being harsh on the kids, especially if he's still carrying his past hurt? Do you come in or do you keep quiet? An example I saw, the kids came to hate their stepmom because to them, she didn't protect them enough.
One thing you do not nacho is a child's safety. I don't care if it's safety from the other children, safety from walking out in the street, safety from running with a knife, or safety from being, for lack of a better word, abused.
Yeah.
If I know one time David got really upset with one of his kids. His kids said something very disrespectful to me, and David was standing right there, and he reacted out of anger. He didn't hit the kid, but he scared the kid.
If I could have got my hands on him.
So even though the kid had disrespected me, I still stepped in and told David, whoa, calm down. You've got to back up. So I didn't do it to get, gratitude or praise or thank yous from the step kid. But I think that helped us because he's like, whoo, she saved my life. And yes, we're being extreme with that because David wouldn't have killed him, even though he probably felt like he would at the time. But if the husband or the dad is being harsh in a physical way or even a mental way. If they are being verbally abusive and telling the kids that they're a piece of crap and they'll never amount to anything and just very, very hurtful things, then yes, step in. But remember, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
I would step in and, try to get the kid out of the situation, let things calm down, and then talk to the dad and say, we need to talk because your behavior is hurting these kids. And then maybe talk to him about getting counseling. Like you said, it's from his past. We all have a different past, and that affects how we parent too.
Yep.
So definitely don't, guilty parent syndrome is a reality. It is a big reality, but don't let anybody abuse a child or even another adult or an animal even in your presence. If I look at it as if I was somewhere and I saw somebody screaming at their kid and just tell them, you're worthless and you're pathetic, I would say something. And that would be to a stranger. Maybe I shouldn't, but I would, because that's just not acceptable to me. Now, granted, in my house, that's not going to happen either.
Yep.
So do what you know is right in your heart. Now, one thing that David mentioned a minute ago that I wanted to follow up on was we can tell when people get to different stages in the Nacho Kids method. One way is they will go, it hit me today that it's not the stepkids, it's their bio parents. They allow them to do this stuff. They allow them to get away without brushing their teeth or doing their homework, whatever it is. That is a monumental point with the Nacho Kids method, because that's when you realize my anger shouldn't really be towards these kids. They're just doing what they can get away with, which anybody would do.
Yep.
Now, I do want to clarify something else too. If David's kids would have cussed me out and cussed at me and just, stuff like that. We see it all the time where the stepkids literally cuss out the step parents. That's a no. That's a no.
Yeah, that's verbal abuse.
And if your husband allows the stepkids to cuss at you, again, your issue is with your significant other, not with the stepkids, because he should nip that in the butt real quick.
Yep. Because as a parent, you are accountable for those kids and their actions.
Right. And David, you said accountable, and it made me think about it. So we often say if the stepkids don't do their chores, which is their responsibility,
right,
that you told them to do, then who's held accountable for that?
So the way we teach it is that the kid, in this scenario, the kid is responsible for something, but the parent is accountable for that. So let's say the kid has to do the dishes, and it's my kid, and I said, your chore is to do the dishes. If that kid does not do the dishes, then I'm held accountable for making sure that's done. Even though it's his responsibility, I'm held accountable. So if the dishes don't get done by my kid, then it is now my responsibility to step in and do the dishes. Not hers, it's mine.
And a lot of stepmoms, now this applies to stepdads too, but we're just playing the role of stepmom, stepdad. A lot of stepmoms will say, oh, you didn't make him do the dishes, and they're still mad because the stepkid didn't do the dishes. No, honey, don't be mad. As long as you weren't the one doing them, be happy.
Yeah, because if you let that continue to play out, what happens in that scenario is that it eventually I'll say, I'm sick of doing these dishes. My son is supposed to be doing the dishes, so I'm going to get his tail in here and let him do the dishes. But you've got to make that parent feel the pain a little bit of what the kid's not doing. If you step in as a step parent and you're doing those things because you're mad or because the step kid didn't do them, then you're removing that pain point. Look, the bio parent is accountable. The kid is responsible. They have to figure that out. That chore is going to get done. It's not going to get done by you. It's going to get done by whoever's responsible for it or whoever's accountable for it.
Right. And if David doesn't want to do the dishes and he doesn't want to make his kid do the dishes, then he can get me a maid.
I'll do the dishes.
Yeah. And one thing that, like I said, we've learned so much. We will be married
11 years?
11 years this year. We were in year 2, like I said, when we started nachoing. And we have learned so much that if we could take what we've learned and stick it in these people's heads before they get married or enter into the blend, it would be perfect. You wouldn't have this 72% failure rate of blended families.
Yeah. We keep talking about doing a pre-marriage nachoing conference or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I wish we would have had that one before we got married. Good grief.
Yeah, but like we said, we don't even know if we would have listened to it then.
No, probably not, because a lot of the things we teach sound so counterintuitive, like that there's no way that would work. And then you start trying and you're like, oh, wow. It not only does it work, but it works great.
And there are a few goals that come out of the Nacho Kids method. The main one is to reduce the stress of the blend, which basically is reducing the step-parent stress, usually the stepmom.
Mm-hmm.
Don't say anything about women always being stressed, David. So you've got to reduce the stress in the blend. Your ultimate goal is to re-engage with the stepkids in a cool aunt, fun aunt, mentor type role.
Yep. So let's talk about a couple of things that you don't do. Like maybe what's the top 3, rules of nachoing? I think there's 10.
Mm-hmm.
So give us a couple of those.
You don't say anything negative to or about the stepkids. Now, let me elaborate. Some people will say, you mean to tell me that I can't tell my stepkid to go walk the dog? No. If you are at the point that your relationship is on the brink of demise, no, you can't. Because you have to build that bond with the stepkids. Otherwise, you're parenting them. Mm-hmm. And saying nothing negative about the stepkids, that's really hard to, I get it. But if I tell David, well, your kids, they never do anything, they're lazy and they're dirty.
Yeah, that's what you said, but that ain't what I heard.
Right.
What I heard
was, I could even say your kids didn't do the dishes again, and this is what he hears.
Yeah, what I hear is you're a crappy parent. You suck at it. Your kids are going to be bums on the street because of you. Mm-hmm. And you probably should never had kids. Right.
And so another goal of the Nacho Kids method is to remove the target off the stepmom's back. Mm-hmm. The stepmom comes in, she's going to be blamed for everything that goes wrong in the house. A water pipe could bust and she's going to be blamed for it because her hair clogged it up. Something, I'm telling you. So we have to remove that target from the step parent's back. And the way to do that is to not put yourself in the middle of things.
Yep. Well, here's a situation that happened to us a lot. And until we finally started nachoing and navigating through it. But we would have a situation where one of my kids did something wrong. And I would be confronting that kid and talking to the kid about it. And then Lori would say something like,
yeah,
yeah, I told you, whatever. So she would say something. Well, now all of a sudden I'm looking at her going, what are you doing? Why are you interjecting? And then now I've got a problem that I was dealing with my kid, one issue. Now she stepped in. When she steps in, now the kid's mad. The kid's yelling at her. She's yelling at the kid. Everybody's yelling at me. I'm yelling at everybody. So now there's a problem that I was initially dealing with. Now there's a problem between her and the kid that I got to deal with. And there's a problem between me and her I have to deal with. So by her stepping in and giving her 2 cents worth, which, there's a coin shortage, as Lori says.
Yeah.
So don't
save your 2 cents.
Save your money. But by her stepping in, that's 3 problems I got to deal with now. 3. Mm-hmm. Went from 1 to 3. Thank you.
Something else you don't do is holler in here and say, David, you better do something with your kids because they're,
jumping on the couch.
Jumping on the couch. Because when he goes to say something to his kids, they know it came from you.
Because they heard it.
Exactly. So let's see. You don't say anything negative to the stepkids. That includes the in-laws. If the mother-in-law goes, so how's stepkid number 2 doing at school? Don't fall for it. Because no matter what you say, it will get turned around that you were saying something negative about that kid.
Yep, sure will.
Leave the parenting up to the bio parent.
Yep.
That's one thing you do.
Yep. And we've already mentioned this, but you can't care more than the bio parent.
Oh, you can.
Yeah, you can.
But it's a waste of your time, your energy, and it's just not good.
Yeah.
And again, we're not saying you can't love your stepkids. I love my stepkids. It took me a while to get there, but I love them and I don't want anything to happen to them. I want them to, be the best they can be. And I want them to know that if they ever need me, that I'm here. And we've gotten to the relationship where they will tell me things that they don't really share with their dad. They use me as a buffer. It's either for me to tell their dad or for me to tell them how to approach their dad.
Yep. That's true.
Yes, definitely leave the parenting to the biological parent. And I know it's hard.
So, leave the parenting up to the Yep. Absolutely.
Yes.
Let them do it.
And be supportive of your husband or your significant other, even if you don't think that they're doing it right, or you think they should punish the kid for longer time if they do something wrong. Don't say that. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. But one thing you can do when you see them trying to step up and be a parent is to say, I really like how you handled that. But then don't say anything else. Don't elaborate, because when you talk too much, that's what gets you in trouble.
Yeah. Don't use the word but. I like how you handle that, but.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. The bio mom, the other bio parent to the stepkids, don't mess with her. Let the interaction about the stepkids be between the bio parents. If they can't get along and it's easier for you to talk to the bio mom and convey messages and kind of be the in-between person, that too will bite you in the butt. Because at some point you're going to get tired of it, or something you said is going to get misconstrued. Let them discuss their children like they should as parents.
Yeah. So we had somebody say, step in when you see unacceptable actions, not for gratitude though. So what do you think about that?
No.
All right, so let's talk about how we handle that. And of course we've said this already, but the Nacho Kids methodology is not for every family. Okay, it doesn't fit every situation. It's for those families that have tried other things. They've tried the step parenting and co-parenting and all that kind of stuff. None of that stuff's working. And so they're looking for other ways to make things happen. So here's how we would handle something like an unacceptable action from a stepkid. All right. So let's say my kids, we'll assume everybody's home. It doesn't really matter if everybody is or not. But let's say my kid is again jumping on the couch, and I'm in a completely different room, oblivious to what he's doing.
And it's driving me insane.
And it's driving you insane. So what do you do? How do you handle that? Do you call the kid down for his unacceptable actions?
No.
Okay. So how do you handle that?
I text you.
Okay.
Texting is great. I can text David and say, hey, when you get a second, walk in here and handle the situation.
Right.
Now, I know I'm throwing a lot out here. You still have to be careful with that. You can't text him every time the kid does something wrong.
Because they're going to turn my phone off.
Right. You almost have to kick into babysitter mode. If this kid's jumping on the couch, if you're a babysitter, yeah, you might say, don't do that. You might get hurt. But you're not going to have the same reaction because it's not your couch.
Yeah.
Okay. So
here's a trick I used to use. I still do sometimes. Like the stepkid's doing something wrong, instead of me calling them down, I'll say, you better hope your mom don't see you doing that.
Yeah.
Because then she's running into the room. What am I missing? What is he doing? And I'm like, ooh.
And you do, you know, again, everybody's definition of unacceptable is different.
Yeah.
Somebody could consider a stepkid leaving their book bag in the middle of the floor as unacceptable. You can eventually get to a point with that stepkid that you can say, hey, you forgot to put your book bag up. But again, if you are struggling so much in the blend that you're ready to throw in the towel and move out and get divorced or split up, whatever, no, start over.
Yeah, you definitely got to take that target off your back. Now, at this point in our relationship, she can absolutely say stuff to the stepkids.
But they know it's coming from a place of love,
right?
Not control.
Right. So the point being, when you start out at that point where you can't say things to the stepkids and you can't call them down for that unacceptable behavior, that's not where you stay. And that's not the goal that we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to the point where you have that relationship that's built on love instead of just responsibility, that you can then interject and interact with them in a way, and they don't see it as you being a evil stepmom. They see it that you care about them, or you care about what they're doing, and so you want them to stop or whatever.
Right. And so a good thing with gratitude is, say that you're doing dishes after eating supper, and one of the stepkids actually takes his dishes and washes them off and puts them in the sink. Be like, hey, good job. You did good. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
I want to back up again for 1 second. There were times that David mentioned that I wouldn't eat dinner with them. One of the reasons, and one of the main times I wouldn't, is if we had spaghetti. Because the kids would slurp the spaghetti. I mean, I'm talking where it's slapping them in the face, they're slurping that spaghetti. It drove me nuts. So rather than create my own misery by sitting there and getting stressed out, I would eat before them or after them. I just was not going to sit there and get mad. Everybody's slurping, and David he doesn't hear it. It doesn't affect him like it does me.
It's my poor little babies.
Yeah, it's your poor little babies.
All right. So somebody posted, don't be mad, let the bio parent be accountable.
Yes.
Absolutely. All right. So how do you handle a situation where the other bio parent always comes to your house at every excuse?
You need to talk to your significant other, and he needs to set boundaries. We have never allowed the exes to come to our home. If there was drop off, normally it was done at school with his kids. He would drop them off on Monday morning. She'd pick them up Monday afternoon for her week, and vice versa. With my son, we meet halfway, a halfway point in between his house and my house. I think she has came over here a total of maybe 3 times.
You count the time she got escorted off by law enforcement?
Yes, I'm including the time that she got told to leave by the police. So what you have to realize is, apparently at some point, the bio mom, the other bio parent, I'm saying bio mom, sorry, it may be bio dad, but the other bio parent thinks it's okay to come to the house. Now, I will tell you, there have been instances where my son has said, hey, I left something there. Can you bring it to me? And I know his dad would flip out if I took it to his house. But I don't pull up in his driveway. He has a long driveway. You can't even see the house from the road. So I would either leave it at the bottom of the driveway, or my son would meet me at the bottom of the driveway to get it. My son's father, I think, picked him up one time at the end of the driveway here at our house. Again, you can't see the house from the road. But your husband has to be, or significant other, has to be the one to address that and create those boundaries and
Yeah.
say, you know, I'm sorry, but you coming over to our home is not going to happen anymore. If you need something, you can contact me and we can figure out a way to get it to you. Or if the kids need something, we can contact you and figure out a way for me to get whatever the item is from you.
And if that comes from you, it's not going to matter.
Right.
So let him handle that, or her, whatever the situation is. All right.
All right. Thank you so much. And Laurie and David, you know, while we were talking, you know, I was thinking, I was having a lot of thoughts, you know, about this conversation. For instance, you know, some of these things, if a lot of people knew about them, I think there are a lot of strife when it comes to step parenting would actually be removed. You know, the little things. In fact, what struck me most was when you shared, you know, on how you need to step back, how you needed to step back to be able to now, you know, begin to rebuild again. And when David said, you need to, many times you hold your stepchildren, you know, by responsibility, and then hold your own kids, you know, by love. So my mom, you know, had a stepmom, and you know, there were things that, you know, were conversations that we have sometimes, and I'm like, it could just be a misunderstanding that was just normal, but of course, many times it could be taken, you know, out of context. And very interesting conversation that you guys, you know, shared was on the in-laws. Oh my, the in-laws. I think that's another, you know, conversation altogether. All right, the in-laws, the mother-in-law, the father-in-law, you know, coming to come and, you know, intrude, ask questions and all that. We have a lot of that in Africa. You know, it's actually because we are very family oriented. So everybody is involved. So the in-laws will be so involved and they will be so in your faces. You know, so in situations like that, it could actually be really difficult because many times when you say, I want to respond, is a problem. When you don't respond, it's a problem also because you're going to be judged. You know, it's going to be said that also because they're not her kids, that's why she didn't respond. Or maybe, you know, they say things like, oh, yes, that means she's not treating the children well. There will be lots and lots of misinterpretation. I know, you know, about misinterpretation of extended blended families and all that. It could get messy, you know, at some point. So in a situation, that would be my question. In a situation whereby you have a lot of intruding family members, in-laws, you know, family of the bio parent, the other bio parent, you know, trying to intrude somehow, you know, asking questions and all that. How are you able to, you know, handle this? I love this. It was real conversations from your experience, and it was so awesome. So I just want to hear how did you handle that when all those, you know, things, you know, started happening?
When we would go to David's parents' house and his mom would ask me questions about the stepkids, I'm telling you, in my head, I would think, you are not dragging me into this mess. So I would say, I don't know. You have to ask David. So you put it back on the bio parent. Or you just say,
I gotta go to the restroom.
Yeah. Or, oh, that's a lovely color on the wall. You change the subject.
Did you have your hair done today?
Like you said, you can be judged for not saying anything or for saying something, but you're going to be more judged for what you say than by not saying
what you don't say. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, if she says, how's step kid number 2 doing in math? If I said, well, he's still struggling, that could easily turn around to Lori said.
Exactly.
Why ain't she helping him? If she cared right about him, she would be helping him. She's a no good.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, well, here's the other part. Is the mother-in-law, she'll be like, she should treat them like her own. But you let the stepmom discipline that kid, it's Who does she think she is? She ain't their mama.
And this is so true. You many times you actually caught in the middle in step parenting, really. Where is either you're judged for what you're doing or you're judged for what you're not doing. And in that way, it's just not very easy. But what you and David have been able to share was from your own experience, and that's really awesome, because many of these conversations are conversations that we don't like to have. Conversations like loving the other child more than your own children, or like your own children. It's not, very, it's over expectation. And these are conversations that we don't want to have, because people tell you, oh no, you just gotta love them the way you love your children. And like you said, when you discipline them the way you would normally want to discipline your children, oh, they say, oh, who is she? She's not even the parent. And they turn it over and turn it against you, right again. And I think that's something that this is a conversation that we've opened up today, and we actually need to continue to have, so that people who are step parenting will understand that they don't need to carry this responsibility on their head and just feel, no, if I don't love them like my children, oh, the world is going to come at me and all that. I think this conversation is so valid. But we have another question that is right in the comment section. Maybe you want to look at it before we begin to round up.
Okay. So how do you handle the spouse who isn't willing to set boundaries with the other bio parent, a spouse who sees nothing wrong with one bio parent coming to your house, etc.? Well, we've never had that problem. I mean, the way you handle that is the way you would handle any marital situation where there's a disagreement. There has to be a conversation about it, and it has to be very tactful. So it can't be one of those conversations where you're mad or you're attacking your significant other about, you shouldn't allow this to happen, you shouldn't let them come over, and you need to do this and you need to do that. That doesn't get what you want, which is you want the buy-in of that parent or that spouse of yours. You want that buy-in to say, okay, there's something wrong with this and the way you feel about it, and I really need to really pay attention to what's happening here and then make some changes. And so one way you can do that is when something like that happens, you use a methodology that is often called the FBI method. And what it's the F stands for feeling, B stands for behavior, and then I stands for impact. So when you have a conversation with somebody, you start with when you fill in the blank. Okay,
let's fill in the blank. When you talk to your ex all day long.
Yeah. Well, we'll do it the way the acronym is. So let's start with feeling. So you start with I feel. Let's see, in this situation, I feel betrayed, or I feel uncomfortable. Okay, so there's feeling, and then let's look at the behavior. When you allow your ex-spouse to come over to the house. Okay, so now we have feeling, behavior. Now the impact. So what is the impact of that? I'm afraid that if this continues, that is going to cause our relationship to decline because there's too much stress involved in it. Okay, so by doing that, you've not accused anybody of anything. You've not started an argument about anything. You're just simply saying, this is the way I feel when this happens, and I'm afraid the end result is going to be this. And just stop. Don't say anything else, and just let it sit there. And that person will think about it for a minute, and they're forced to respond, even though you've not asked them a question. They're forced to say, I didn't realize that you felt that way. I'll take that into consideration, and let's see what I can do about it. So oftentimes you can get somebody to do what you want or listen to what you want them to listen to without actually even saying anything other than, this is how I feel when it happens. That's it.
And remember too, with step families, with the bio parents, a lot of times one bio parent doesn't want to rock the boat with anything with the other bio parent because they're afraid they'll take them back to court or they'll hold the kids and not let them see them. It's unfortunate, but the step families or the blended families, a lot of our reactions are based on fear. Fear that the kids will want to go live with the other parent, or fear that the parent won't let the kid come over here. If you're having trouble with the boundaries that are being set with your significant other and their ex, then you've definitely got to talk to them about it. But I would also say you've got to figure out what your non-negotiables are. What is the hill that you're willing to die on? Your hill you're willing to die on is, maybe the ex likes to hug him every time he comes over. And you're like, if she hugs you one more time, I'm leaving. You really have to come up with your non-negotiables.
Yeah. Keep your hands to yourself.
Yeah.
Well, one person put on here, especially here in Africa, because we don't want to talk about it. The woman is termed an evil stepmother. Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
That's not an Africa thing. That's everywhere.
We have
it's actually everywhere. It's actually everywhere. But when Laurie was sharing how got to a point where the children hated her and she also hated them, so it was just vice versa. I was just enjoying the conversation, and it was very, very vivid that many of the parenting challenges that we have are universal. They're not peculiar. They're not peculiar to a particular environment. I was in a parenting global conference last year in the US, and we had people from all over the world: Asia, Africa, America, Europe. And it was so interesting that everything that was shared there was the same thing. It's just cultural differences, the different culture and how we react to the situations. But the situations are just same. So when you were sharing about being hated as a stepmother, it was funny to me because down here also many times that's the fight. Whenever stepmoms get into step parenting, there's this friction. And I think the friction happens, like Laurie said, because we want to step in instead of just step back to actually parent from the back, then to in. We want to do it from inside to the outside instead of doing it from the outside to the inside. That way we're able to build trust over the years, and the children will actually be able to trust us. And Laurie said something when she was having this conversation, very vivid. He said, even when the other bio parent is late, I've seen this very, very significantly play a role in step parenting. We fight it. So I have a cousin that has a stepmom, and their bio mom is late. Yet the conversations he had, with me about his bio mom, it's so interesting. Like, the bio mom is there, like she's alive, and I'm like, the woman is gone. So why not just come to the point? It's not as easy as we make it seem. And I think being able to bring these conversations to fore is something that is very, very, very important. Unfortunately, we've run out of our time, and time just flies. We've done 30 minutes extra of our time. We've done 1 hour, 30 minutes on this conversation. I want to say thank you so much to David and Laurie. This conversation was so on point. The fact that it was even shared from your own life experience made it so, so, so awesome. I love the fact that you're sharing this in another continent, and many people are connected. We have people connected from Australia, from Asia, from Europe, and a lot of people are concurring to the fact that yes, these things are just everywhere. And I think having these conversations more and more will help us as regards step parenting and running blended families, because we're not going to run away from it. So instead of saying, "Oh no," once you get you come out of, or maybe your spouse dies, become a divorcee, or your spouse dies and you want to remarry, and then there's a very the statistics, the failure statistics are actually very high. And what you guys are trying to do is to reduce these statistics to significantly to the barest minimum. Thank you and kudos to you guys. Thank you for sharing this with us at the Intentional Parent Conference. I really do appreciate your time. We were supposed to do this maybe a bit earlier, but I'm really glad that we did it at this time. I know that David couldn't find a time that was earlier than now to be able to fit in for us to have this conversation. Thank you so much, David, for coming on with Laurie to share with us. I really, really do appreciate that. I don't take it for granted. Thank you for speaking all the way from the US to be able to share your story with us at the TIP Annual Conference. Thank you, everybody, for watching us. This is the Intentional Parent Annual Conference, and this conference was brought to you by the Intentional Parent Academy. Today, this is the last session that we just had with Laurie and David and Laurie Sims sharing with us on blended family. Tomorrow, we're going to return here with Chichi sharing with us on raising responsible teens who matter. That will be at 5 p.m., 12 noon US time. And we're going to have Kate Joes also from the US. Kate Joes, who runs the firm a dad's community, is going to be sharing with us on raising dads to raise wholesome children. And he will be speaking at 6 p.m. West African time and 1 p.m. the United States time. And then we will have Akirobo exactly at 7 p.m. share with us. Akirobo is from Nigeria, from Lagos, Nigeria, sharing with us on raising boys who matter. And then we will move, that will be at 7 p.m. and at 2 p.m. US time. And then we'll close the day at 8 p.m., 3 p.m. US time with Irene Bangwell. Irene Bangwell is going to be speaking from Abuja, Nigeria, where she'll be sharing with us on raising girls who matter. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you so much for contributing to the TIP Annual Conference. If you want to contact us, you can look down on the comment on the stream right on your screen, and you'll see our contact, theintentionalparentacademy.com, or you can reach us with that number. Thank you again, Laurie and David. This was such an awesome conversation. You can be sure that we're going to bring you to have this conversation again and again, because it's something that is so for me is a new aspect of reaching out to parents, especially for blended parents. And if we must change anything, then we must start to talk about it. So talking about it is the first point of call, and I'm so happy that you agreed to do this. Thank you so much, Laurie. Thank you. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
And tell the stepmoms you are not alone. You are not alone. And awesome. Can I tell them the email address in case they want to contact us?
Oh, yes, sure. Go ahead. And we will still share that to our registered participants as well, but you can go right ahead and share with them.
If you would like to email us, you can contact us at nachokids@nachokids.com.
Let me write that down. All right, David, will you be sharing your last words with parents that are listening to you today?
Well, I would say that, kind of stepping on top of what Laurie said, as far as you're not alone. The other aspect of that is you don't have to live in the situation that you're in. So if you're struggling in your blended family, in your step family situation, there is help out there, and there is something that is going to work for you. And if it's not the Nacho Kids method, then don't stop looking. There are other people who have other methodologies too, but you can have a good blended family life and situation. Don't stop until you find it.
Awesome. I like that. Don't stop until you find it. You must know that there's help for you out there. If you're parenting alone, there's help for you. If you're parenting in a blended family, there's help for you. If you're parenting together with your spouse, there's help for you. Either way, there is help for you. Look for it. Continue looking for it until you find it. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here with me. And this is the Intentional Parent Annual Conference 2020. And this is where we sign out for today. And we meet you again right at 5 p.m. when we return at the conference. Thank you, David and Laurie. Thank you. And I'm sure it's summer, right? So that I'm sure you're enjoying summer right now.
Hot.
I can imagine. All right. Okay. Thank you.